Americans to remember Pearl Harbor, September 11, 2001, when our country was under attack. Sadly, his country is experiencing their own horror now every single day. He also invoked Martin Luther King Jr., and Zelensky said his dream is to protect Ukrainian skies. And now President Zelensky is begging Joe Biden for help. Take a look.
Today, the Ukrainian people are defending not only Ukraine. We are fighting for the values of Europe and the world, sacrificing our lives in the name of the future. That's why today the American people are helping not just Ukraine, but Europe and the world to keep the planet alive. I'm addressing the President Biden. You are the leader of the nation, of your great nation. I wish you to be the leader of the world. Being the leader of the world means to be the leader of peace. Thank you.
Many Americans tonight are asking this question: what should America's role be when you see horror and mass graves and dead children and women in the streets? What is America's role in this? Let me be clear what it shouldn't be. A no-fly zone over Ukraine, that's not America's role. That can't happen. That would likely put American fighters in a direct fighting position and in war with Russia. We cannot be the world's police force. U.S. boots on the ground, that can't happen either. It hasn't worked out well in the past. This would involve the United States engaging then with Russia in a war. And that could very likely signal the real beginning of World War III with nuclear proliferation just a button away. But America, we have a conscience and a soul, and we care about innocent men, women, and children. There are many ways that we can help. I go back to Ronald Reagan. He provided, for example, the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, the Stinger missiles. Well, that helped Afghanistan defeat the former Soviet Union in the 1980s. Reagan made that happen. Reagan also provided weaponry to the freedom fighters, the Contra rebels in Nicaragua, to battle Daniel Ortega and the Sandinistas. He was successful there. Reagan never put a single American boot on the ground. These weapons help these freedom fighters defeat bad actors. We should learn the lessons from Reagan. Give Zelensky what he's asking for, the weapons that they need so they can battle back against Russia. Frankly, they've shown incredible courage and effectiveness so far against Russia. They are showing their willingness to do their own fighting. They're just asking for the tools of war. The late, great Charles Krauthammer once wrote, "Enter the Reagan Doctrine, which relies on indigenous revolutionaries to challenge, for reasons that parallel but need not coincide with ours, the Soviet Empire and its periphery." Now, this strategy effectively countered the Soviet communists, like I said, in places like Central America, again, without putting an American boot on the ground and not risking a single American life. This is similar to what President Trump did in 2017 with great success in Iraq. This is after Joe Biden and Barack Obama let this ISIS caliphate build out. Without a large group presence, Donald Trump utterly destroyed the ISIS caliphate using modern weaponry and technology to do it, pushing buttons in Tampa, Florida, and with pinpoint precision, taking out one target after another. And 2 years later, President Trump utilized a similar strategy. He took out Iran's top terrorist, Soleimani, with a drone strike in Baghdad right there on the tarmac of an airport, again, without putting a single boot on the ground. Trump projected peace through strength. This is peace through strength. Look, I am a registered conservative. I like to say, when people ask me, the media mob likes to, how do you describe your political philosophy? Well, I'm a Reagan conservative. I'm a Make America Great Again conservative, a Save America conservative, an American First conservative. Now, the Reagan doctrine worked. The Trump doctrine worked. We need to remember these important lessons from both Trump and Reagan and apply them to any future conflict where American interests and the cause of freedom are at stake. And now in Ukraine, without the possibility of American air power or boots on the ground, it is critical that the U.S. take a moral stand, and Europe especially, give Ukraine the ability to protect their own skies. And that would include sending dozens of MiG-29 fighters that were offered from Poland. But unfortunately, our weak and frail and cognitively struggling president, Joe Biden, single-handedly nixed that plan. And today he refused to answer any questions about the decision to block these critical planes from being put to good use by Ukrainian pilots. Take a look.
Mr. President, what will it take for you to send the Polish MiGs that President Zelensky is asking for?
I'm not going to comment on that right now. I'm not going to comment anything other than what I told you to say. Thank you.
They told me I'm not allowed to take questions. They get mad at me and everything. If I take a question, they tell me I'm not allowed. I won't get my ice cream tonight. Anyway, we need to be brutally honest here. I don't trust Biden. I don't trust Kamala Harris. And I don't trust Nancy Pelosi. They are all pathetically weak in terms of the leadership. The top three people, there's your chain of command, and they are enthusiastically cheering on Zelensky. That's fine. The planes that Poland was willing to give him. American politicians generally, we learned this through COVID. We've learned it in past wars. They are not to be trusted. I don't trust most of those swamp creatures in Washington. The last 60 years has taught the United States a lot. Politicians, they're all gung-ho. They start their wars. They send our national treasure, our kids, to go fight these wars. They don't fight to win these wars. They politicize them some point thereafter and then say, oops, never mind. It's hurting my poll numbers. And they do that after how many American kids fought, bled, and died? How many come home severely wounded? Debilitating injuries. Never again. We can never trust them again. But we can stand on our principles, the leading one being freedom. Now, meanwhile, Europe, I have a message for you tonight. You've got to step up to the plate. This war is in your backyard, not our backyard. It's time for you to pay your fair share and your full dues to NATO. It's time for you to get these important weapons and supplies to Ukraine and get them there one way or another and stop asking Joe Biden for permission. But here's where things get really strange and very concerning back here at home. The Biden administration is actually forging ahead with their idiotic Iranian nuclear deal, which is still, according to reports, being brokered, this is unconscionable, by Russia and China. And according to the Washington Free Beacon, this deal could include a plan that would let Russia cash in on a $10 billion contract to build a nuclear site in Iran. Now, if you think the world can't get any nuttier, there you go. It just got nuttier. But it gets worse. Axios tonight reporting that the Biden administration is also weighing a deal to remove terrorists from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard. That's their top-tier terror list, so long as they promise to be good little terrorists in the neighborhoods in the Middle East. Are you going to trust them? They're vile, murdering terrorists responsible even for the deaths of American soldiers in Iraq. And remember, by the way, this is a week after Iran nearly blew up our own consulate in Iraq with a ballistic missile. Not a peep out of Joe or Kamala Harris. If these reports are true, Joe Biden is truly the Neville Chamberlain of our time. And of course, China, they're watching all of this. They plot their violent, what they call reunification of Taiwan, really a takeover of Taiwan. Recently, they vowed to impose the worst consequences, maybe even nuclear weapons, on any country that might help Taiwan militarily, which, by the way, we already do. And a few days ago, my next guest traveled to Taiwan, a country that is now preparing, rightly so, for the worst. And here with more is former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, good to see you. First, let me get your reaction to President Zelensky today. And I like the Reagan model and I like the Trump model. Am I wrong in my analysis? Do you have a better idea?
No, Sean, I think that's right. Those two models were very consistent. They were speak pretty softly, but when it was time to swing into action, you did it with full force. You weren't late. You weren't behind. You weren't slow. You were protecting America's interest everywhere you went. In your opening, you talked about the moral imperative to do this. I think President Zelensky talked about that eloquently today. But there's an important American set of interests here as well that we need not forget, right? The American economy is going to be impacted by this. Fertilizer, food, oil, and gas, all going to be more expensive because the Biden administration put climate change ahead of protecting sovereignty and freedom in this place. I think you have it right. We should be providing all the tools that the Ukrainian people need to defend themselves. We have them. The Europeans have them. They can do an awful lot more too. But instead, President Biden has been behind. He's allowed Vladimir Putin to dictate the pace and the response. He's allowed Vladimir Putin to dominate how we think about the structure of what's taking place here, and we can do better than this. Americans deserve it. The Ukrainian people deserve it as well, and I think President Zelensky spoke to that very, very nicely today.
Well, why, when Poland wanted to give these MiGs to Ukraine, the person that vetoed that idea was Joe Biden. It went right to him. Why wouldn't he say to Poland, do whatever you think is right?
It's hard to explain, Sean, why he would take the posture that said that there was a European country wanting to provide weapon systems that belong to that European country to give to their European friend and partner, the Ukrainians, that President Biden would say, step in and say, nope, we're not going to let that happen. It's hard to also explain, Sean, why we're second-guessing what Zelensky says he needs to defend himself. He has demonstrated, his military leaders have demonstrated their capability to defend against a Russian military that we thought was really capable. If they're asking for certain tools, we ought to do our best to give them to them, and we shouldn't wait. We are months behind. I know this war's nominally only been going on for a handful of weeks, but we've known for months that this was in the offing, and we should have been stacking these weapons, javelins, missiles, stingers, all the things that the Ukrainians need to defend themselves for months and months and months. Instead, we're going to get them to them. I hope we get them to them fast and in a serious way.
One of the things that we got to keep in mind is we see hostilities with North Korea heating up in their ICBM testing. Doesn't always work out well for them. Then we have this Iranian deal now back on the table, which seems to me it seems dramatically worse than the first bad deal that they did. I guess Joe wants to import oil from Iran, and I guess Joe might be okay with Vladimir Putin building a nuclear facility for the Iranians, and I guess Joe wants to import oil from Venezuela and Iran. Those are things that I can't really comprehend, Mr. Secretary. But you were in Taiwan recently, but also you know President Xi. He's watching all of this. What is he thinking tonight, and what is Taiwan thinking tonight?
Well, I was just in Taiwan. I can tell you what the Taiwanese people are thinking. They're thinking that being stuck in the middle without an American set of leaders that are prepared to assist you when a superpower, a big nation comes to attack you, they're very concerned. It puts them on edge. I think Xi Jinping's watched this too. And while I've seen the Biden administration applauding, saying, boy, we have European unity, that unity came only after an enormous amount of destruction inside of Ukraine that continues to this day. I think Taiwan is certainly watching that. I'm confident that the Xi Jinping's not only watching what's going on in Ukraine today, but he's watching us sit at a table in Vienna while the Russians are killing innocent women and children. We're sitting on the same side of the negotiating table with the Russians about to hand Iran a clear pathway to getting Russian weapon systems. It sounds like we've let the Russians sell equipment to the Iranians as part of this deal as well. I mean, Sean, this is unexplainable. It is a level of appeasement that we haven't seen in the United States in an awfully long time, and it is dangerous not only for the Taiwanese, not only for the Ukrainians, but it's dangerous for the United States of America to watch bad guys rule the West.
And when you watch the communist Chinese fly their fighter jets over Taiwan airspace to the degree that they have, and they talk about reunification to the extent that they have, it seems pretty clear to me that they have their own territorial ambitions, and they're probably soon going to follow through on them. I hope I'm wrong, Mr. I don't think I am.
Sean, I hope you're wrong too. Whether you're wrong or not will depend an awful lot on how the United States responds, how the Japanese, the Australians, the South Koreans respond. If we do this well, I promise you, the Taiwanese people are very capable, and they're prepared to fight the same way you've seen the Ukrainians fight. They can change the calculus for Xi Jinping. They can make this cost extraordinary for him, but we can't wait. We can't wait until he's got ships at sea and airplanes in the air and a blockade established to say, oh goodness, now we're going to gather at some place and decide what we're going to do. We should be preparing the Taiwanese with all the tools they tell us they need, and make sure that Xi Jinping understands that we are serious. When he raises the specter, as he did just this past week, when the Chinese talk about the big price that the United States will pay for sending equipment to Taiwan, he's talking about the use of nuclear weapons too. We cannot allow tyrants to threaten nuclear weapons, to engage in coercive behavior. It didn't happen for 4 years in our administration. We shouldn't let it happen now.
I hope they're listening. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, we do need the adults back in power. That would be really helpful. Thank you for being with us. All right, we take you live to the ground in Ukraine.